I am so excited for people to hear the conversation with Theresa Neil, who's a brilliant tech person in the space who has taken her prodigious talents from designing solutions for large companies to focusing on developing applications and solutions for women's health. And it's just so cool how we just keep learning as we're doing this show, which I really love.
Well, I also found it incredibly refreshing that, there is no place in women's health where she will not venture into. Her companies that she is investing in really span the reproductive lifespan and really can help women at all stages. So I found that super interesting.
And it was interesting to listen to how comfortable she is talking about these conditions because she started our conversation by saying when she had this idea to help female health startups, she couldn't even comfortably say the word vagina, and she's come a long way.
Well, I think we changed that definitely, right? Let's talk to Teresa. Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun-Scherl. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited to have Theresa Neil with us today. Theresa wears many different hats. She recently just sold her business that she had been building for 20 years, and now you're here today as the founder of Femovate. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Tell us a little bit about your background and what Femovate is and when you initially had the idea, because it's really grown. You've been at it for a while.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a tech person. I started off as a software developer and I ended up building out a design studio, which I ran for 20 years. It's since been acquired by an engineering firm out of Dallas, Texas that focuses on healthcare. They're called Invene, great partner to be working with now. But in 2022, summer of 2022, I had an idea that we should be doing something to help women. And at that time, our design studio worked across all different industries like cybersecurity, genetics, healthcare, lots and lots of FinTech. And although we work with a lot of female executives doing these projects, we didn't work with a lot of female founders. And so the first idea was actually, how could we support female founders? And then the next idea was, what if we supported FemTech? Because not everybody innovating in women's health is female, but a lot of the founders are women. And if we were to support these folks with design services and research services, it would save them a little bit of time and effort in finding a trustworthy group to work with. We have the domain expertise, we have the passion for working on these projects and helping young founders. And so 30 days later, we launched Femovate.
And
I'm
what
sorry to sound so naive, but from in my gynecology world, please tell me what is a design studio and what do you
Oh,
do
yeah.
in one?
Yes, definitely. It sounds fun though, right? Like, it's
It sounds great.
pretty
Yeah.
magical. So, a design studio or a design consultancy, in many cases, like ours, was a digital product design place. So anything that you're using, an app that you're using on the phone, software you're using within your practice, QuickBooks for your finances, all of that software that we've designed for many, many
Got
major
it.
companies like eBay and Bloomberg and MasterCard and things like
Sure.
that.
I
But
appreciate that.
oh,
I'm
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
clothing and fashion, so thank you for
Oh,
clarifying.
yes. No, that's not an area I have any skills in, but we were really good at software and we thought, there's so many there's so many things needed for women's healthcare that again, we would be able to kind of boost these early stage founders and give them like a really trusted resource to help them with their product design strategy, like whether they were doing like imaging software or gynecological tools or
Yeah.
digital therapeutics, we could be right there with them and help them shape that product strategy.
So talk about the business model because it's really kind of interesting. It was and might still be a labor of love. Talk about how what you invested in Femovate. You know, how many companies have gone through it right now, and what keeps you motivated to keep doing this work?
I always feel a little embarrassed when people ask me about the business model for Femovate because I'm a business major. I'm supposed to be like this great business person, but I didn't build Femovate as a profit-driven business. It was just an idea. We thought we would be able to help founders, and we were going to invest like 50K worth of our services to help 2 or 3 teams. The first year we picked up and supported 30 startups. The next year we rolled over 10 and picked up 20 new. We're up to like 70 some odd startups at this point. And it's all self-funded. We pulled all of the profits from our design studio and funneled it into this work. So this is pro bono work for these early stage startups. So it's not much of a business model, right? Because it's not sustainable. There's no profit, there's no additional revenue coming in to sustain it. But we're 3 years in. I'm so glad we did it. I'm so glad I didn't listen to everybody who was like, oh, you shouldn't do it like that. You need to take equity or you need to charge these people. And I was like, no, it's an underserved group. Female founders are underserved. Women's health is underserved. Sometimes you just have to give folks a boost and worry about like how it's going to play out later. And Rachel, we've
Yeah.
talked a lot about working for free. And I spent 20 years, I never did a dime of pro bono work. And
But
then,
let me just
yeah,
interrupt for a second to say, not only is it pro bono, you've spent your own money, a
right.
significant amount of your own money. So it's not even free, it's costing you, which is amazing. And as a person who's always been profit driven, what do you see? You're obviously getting a lot of benefit personally. I mean, in terms of enjoying the work, where do you see it going? Because now you have, 70 companies in your portfolio. Some of them have really taken off. There is an opportunity for some of these companies to be able to pay you.
Well,
What are you thinking about?
I've been noodling it. I have a bunch of different ideas. Some of them I bounced off of you in the past. And one of the things that I think we should do going forward is with Femovate, so we can continue to support women's health, is change the program. So we could run a call for applications every year, and every year we could pick 5 or 20 or 30 or 50 companies to help. Is that what women's health needs? And after a couple of months of reflection since I sold the design studio, I've decided no, that's not what women's health needs. Women's health doesn't need hundreds or thousands of point of care solutions that are disconnected. Now, we may need these technologies and these inventions, but they need to be integrated into like strategic partnerships, ecosystems, platforms that are doing more care like across the continuum. And so I think our program needs to change. And then, well, I'll pause for a second because Alyssa, I'd really
Yeah.
like to hear what
Well,
you think about that.
yes. I mean, I'm thinking so hard about everything that you're saying, and it's so admirable. What I want to understand is how do you choose your unmet needs? Because there are many. And, looking through all of the companies that you are supporting, I mean, they really are all over the map in women's health. And it kind of overwhelmed me to say, wow, we have a lot of needs, whether it's in fertility, maternity care, endometriosis, chronic disease, you name it, it seemed to be up there. Obviously, menopause is top of mind for many right now. And what you just said is really resonating, which is there are so many platforms, it becomes overwhelming. So, how do you choose really where to go?
Well, initially, when we did the call for applications, we didn't know what we were. Okay, I'm just going to back up and say, when we
Hmm.
started Femovate, I was not even comfortable saying the word vagina or talking about women's health. I didn't
And look
even
at you
really
now.
fully understand my body. As a mid-40s woman who has had 3 kids, I have learned so much diving into
I'm
women's health.
so happy to hear that. I often start some of my talks with everybody say vagina, just so we kind of do that ice breaking in the audience. But hooray. Hmm.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm a different person than I was 30 years ago. But that first call for applications that we did was really this illuminating experience where we had this close to 100 applications globally. We decided, because these are all pre-seed and seed stage companies, so very, very early companies. Frankly, their pitch decks were not very persuasive, but we didn't want to select based on pitch decks, right? Because that's one of the things they might be asking for help with, is to,
Yeah.
really, what should my business model be? How should I speak about that value? Who am I even going to target as my initial market? So we met with every single one of these founders over a 30-day period, and it was the
Amazing.
most educational and fascinating and horrifying month of my career. I had no idea so many things in our body could break. No idea. And then, like, I would get off at each call of hearing these things and think, oh God, I hope that doesn't happen to me, because clearly there's nothing available to support me if I have prolapse. Like, there's a lack of good options, right? Or what about when I'm in perimenopause? Or thank goodness I didn't die during labor from postpartum hemorrhage, knowing what the standard of care is now. So, in that first round, it was really about us learning what was going on
Yeah.
in women's health, and then looking to select companies that, again, seemed credible. Now, I don't have a medical background, so I wasn't able to necessarily, identify if somebody was running a genomic test, if that was accurate. I can't go in and look at the science. But prior to running Femovate, I'd worked with 100 startups, so kind of knew the pattern for what founder might be good, right? And if they had a good instinct on the business strategy and how they were thinking critically and how they were taking
That
feedback, right?
that is so interesting, because I was going to ask you, is it a product, a disease state, an unmet need, or a founder, a person that really drives you towards particular companies? And I think you just answered that.
Yeah, it's a rubric of all of the things. And then we have things that,
Mhm.
like, are red flags that this is probably not a good fit, or maybe the founder is not at this level of maturity yet. Not to say they won't be, but it's not a good fit for the program yet. And all these companies had to have a digital component. So I remember, Rachel, you asked for a real story. I remember one of the last interviews with a founder I did. We were taking calls all day and night because we had people in Japan and Australia and India applying. And this woman came on, very young woman, in a dark room. She was like in her apartment with her roommates. It's like the middle of the night for her. And she's applying, so she wants to be on. And she's talking to me about UTIs. And she's like, have you ever had a UTI? And yes, of course. And have you had a recurring UTI? No, fortunately, no. And they really suck. And you're like, absolutely. It's a annoyance. It's painful. They always hit at the wrong time. You have to run to Walgreens and get the little, pills that turn your pee red. And she's like, yeah, so I came up with, God, what was it? I came up with like my own biome or my own bacteria that'll like solve them. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? Like, and we couldn't take her into the program. I'm like, okay, is that a thing? You can just solve it? You could, like, why haven't we already solved it then? Why do we only have this course of antibiotics and then these pain relief pills? We couldn't take her in the program though, because we provide digital design services, and that is not a tech product. But I was just really blown away by all of these different founders. And we really did want to pick people in different areas of women's health, because we know from working across lots of different industries, when you're working in different groups, there's so many things that are applicable and transferable. And if you stay in one silo, like you just stay in breast health or you just stay in menopause, you're not seeing all that innovation that's happening that you can draw from.
So here's today's hot flash, and this comes from the NIH. Approximately 54% of women digitally track at least one health metric, and an estimated 50 million women worldwide use an app to track their menstruation and other health stats.
I love that that's the perspective you take, because it's taken years for our ecosystem, however you define it, to really understand that the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone and all that, and I've learned this from Alyssa over the years as well. You can't just treat a patient's symptoms. You have to understand what they're eating and how they're sleeping and if they're exercising and if they're drinking and, what they do for a living, really take a much more holistic approach to health. So I love that you brought that perspective. Can you share an example that really excited you where you could see, based on your partnership, and I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but we'd really love an example of where you helped a company get from point A to point B, what the solution was and what we are now able to do better, or what now people are healthier, what are the outcomes? Are there clinical outcomes that we can connect? Because again, Alyssa has taught me, it's great to talk about these things, but if they're not improving standard of care in some way, then they might just be nice ideas.
That's another reason to work across not just different verticals in women's health, but build things for providers and payers and healthcare systems and employers and patients and caregivers, right? So that we can understand, oh, we made this great technology. Providers, it doesn't fit in their workflow. Payers
Yeah.
aren't interested in paying for that. This isn't a problem that needs to be solved. We have to figure out it. So like, it's really important to work with all those different
Yeah.
roles and segments as well. So an example of a team, I love all the teams I work with. I think what they're doing is amazing and it is so exciting. We're 3 years in. It's so exciting to see them grow. We've had so many wins from everything from them receiving investments, moving into Series A, receiving grants, like one of the teams won an ARPA H Women's Health Innovation Spark Award last year, which was super exciting. So it was very competitive. And that's a team called Neura Health, and they are building an end-to-end platform for endometriosis. So instead of just a test kit, which will be beautiful, right? I don't want to diminish anybody who's working on a test kit for diagnosing endometriosis. But what if we also had early screening for young girls as they're going into puberty, right? Why wait until somebody's already spent 7, 8 years trying to figure out what's going on with their body? So screening, diagnosis, understanding of exactly what's going on in this woman's body so that we can do precision medicine, and then monitoring to see if that precision medicine treatment is actually working for her or if she actually does need to go in for surgery. So they're creating this
Yeah.
end-to-end platform.
So interesting. We know we've discussed endometriosis on this show before, that the average time to diagnosis is about 7 years for endometriosis and multiple providers later. The entire thinking behind the cause of endometriosis has changed in my career now twice, but really right now it's considered a chronic disease of inflammation and inflammatory condition with a little bit of retrograde menstruation dashed in there. So I think it's very interesting to get involved with this as the theories are getting changed as to the root cause. Do you feel like that's helping with your company's end-to-end diagnosis or picking this up because there's a different root cause considered right now?
I think so. Now, the founder of that company is a physician, whereas again, I am not. I'm a software person. So I am along for the ride. I'm not able to
Okay.
discern exactly how things are being implemented and if they're scientifically correct. A lot of this stuff, right? Like we're just missing so much research we don't even know. Perhaps
Yeah.
their platform is going to contribute to the research to help even refine that new thought around inflammation as the root cause. So
So
we'll
I
see.
want to I want to connect your two areas of expertise, which is tech and medicine. So you can't be in any meeting on any topic on any day in any country without talking about AI and its impact in healthcare. And as a layperson, my feeling always is that the most immediate benefit of AI in women's health was it could be a proxy, not a substitute, but a proxy for the decades and decades of foundational research we don't have on women's health. So we can look for patterns and things like that. Given that you have to understand what the data is going to be used for, how do you even start to think about AI as part of a solution? And are there any solutions you're working on moving forward that don't have an AI component?
Oh, well, first we'll have to like break down and think about there's so many different types of AI. We're talking about generative
Right.
AI, agentic AI, conversational AI. So in thinking about the things that we're working on now, I can't think of any products off the top of my head that aren't using AI at some point in the tech stack, like in the platform. But it might not be at every point, right? It might not have
Right.
all the different types of AI, nor would it necessarily need it. But I don't know if AI can backfill the fact that we don't have data. I think it can process data faster, maybe
Mhm.
surface trends and insights earlier, but I don't think we can use it to backfill the data we don't have. I'm excited about the way that I see women's health founders thinking in a very collaborative way many times, and that hopefully as they're you know, ethically and conscientiously asking people to opt in and share their data for these studies, that they're then going to share the data with each other so that maybe we can backfill faster. That would be my hope.
It I've told this story before, but last year at JP Morgan, someone was talking about this concept of, not just talking about AI, but data and how it's limited based on the quality of the data that you have in the first place. And one of the investors sat on a panel and said they reviewed a lot of claims data. And the conclusion they drew from that claims data is that 30% of women went into menopause. And
Oh
so
gosh.
we were just laughing, like, okay, what happened to the other 70%? Did they die? Were they not part of the sample set? But the idea that even at the most fundamental level, the data that we have isn't good. That's number one. And number two, to your point, Teresa, we're not sharing it. We're asking each company to recreate their own data set. And it slows everybody down. It costs everybody money. And there's a way to do this so multiple companies can make money with the same data.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a couple dimensions there to think about as well in terms of you need the data to train the AI. So we've got to have that base research data to train it. And then you need another set of data to test it on. And so as we're all collectively thinking about this and investing in women's health research, let's make sure that we're getting data across all ages of women, all ethnicities of women, all abilities, so that when we're doing that initial training and then we go and test it on real, I don't know, I worked with a team that they did their training with a great set of data, and then they went and tested the model to see if it worked on existing mammograms. And the existing mammogram data they had was 50% women of color and 50% Caucasian. And it went fine, but it could have went awry, and they would have had to go back to the drawing board and spend more time and money and go back and raise more, which we know is very challenging in women's health, if that model had initially not taken into account the differences across ethnicities, ages, socio-demographic situations, right?
I think one area where there is quite a bit of data is the menopause space, particularly because it's already reached the digital age and it did quite some time ago. And there are multiple platforms collecting data. Do you think this space is even close to saturation in your world or not yet? Because, it just seems like a lot of the platforms, particularly those that involve telehealth, where they're definitely collecting real world data, are competing, like Rachel spoke about, rather than combining, unless, of course, some of them go out of business, which will happen.
Yeah, there could be consolidation. So menopause, fascinating. So part of the work that I do is I go out and do research with women and providers around whatever topic we're designing for. So let's say menopause. And when we went out and did research with women who were pre-perimenopause, perimenopause, menopause, and then I guess it's not post-menopause, but in menopause,
Yeah.
we found that general population women in the US know virtually, like myself, know virtually nothing about our bodies. And in order for us to even start teaching them so that they'd be able to access some of the treatments and interventions that are out there, we had to start back at the very, very beginning. Did you know that your body was born with all the eggs you're ever going to have? And then we talk about puberty and early reproductive years and then late. And finally, once we lay that foundation, we can start talking about the changes in the body for perimenopause, right? And what those signs or symptoms might be. What are some treatments and interventions? I do not think the space is saturated yet. There may be a high saturation happening across the telehealth for calling in with symptoms and getting prescribed HRT. But when you start thinking of any intervention or treatment other than that, or in addition to that, I'm not seeing like a lot of the products that I have on these market maps that we're creating across every vertical, not seeing a lot happening other than the telehealth space that's made it into market yet.
So
Understand why.
this leads me to what I'm really very curious about, which is obviously even despite the lack of knowledge out there, which hopefully is improving, the FDA's decision to change the warning labels on hormone or estrogen menopause related products, that is going to really democratize the access to hormone therapy for so many people, specifically on these platforms. And that's kind of where I was going, because once it becomes easy to get educated and get access to treatment, do those other treatments become as important, or alternatives remain as important, because hormones would be so much easier to access?
I don't know. I mean, when we started building out our market map on perimenopause and menopause, so the technology that's coming out, we call it FemTech horizon maps of like what's emerging on the horizon. It was interesting to look at this dimension of prolonging ovarian aging.
Yeah.
So yes, it's very cool that people are going to be able to access HRT and that there's conversation around it. I still think there's a lack of education of when women should even start looking at that. There's a lot of misconceptions of, oh, I should like look into that like at 50 or something, not even understanding they're experiencing symptoms now in their late 30s. But what about these other innovations that are happening again that are like being research driven of what if we prolong ovarian aging? What if we do different things with our diet and nutrition and reduce inflammation during, like if you have endometriosis, all of these different things. And I'm not saying anybody listening to this should go do those things. I'm not a doctor, but it does seem like there is still a lot of space for innovation, even once we democratize access to HRT.
I love hearing
think
that.
so?
I just think that we have a massive opportunity. So that's good to hear. And as usual, I don't want to leave the doctor out of the loop, because we enjoy what we're doing. So Rachel knows that.
So I'm curious about data privacy. How has that changed given what has happened and what we've seen? And there have been a couple of cases where people's data got into the wrong hands, and in women's health, it has huge implications if the wrong people get your data. Have you found that when you're building these, privacy has become even more important? And are there new techniques in development that protect this data even more?
Oh my gosh, what I'm experiencing is working with early stage founders who are either clinicians and they're trying to solve problems they see on a day-to-day basis, or people with a lived experience, maybe a clinician and lived experience, and then people with a mission. Maybe they lost a sister to ovarian cancer and they are on a mission to figure out how to do early screening for this. They don't necessarily have a tech background. And although they're great founders and they absolutely want to provide data privacy and security to their end users, they are not necessarily well versed in what needs to be done to set that up correctly in their platform.
And HIPAA compliant is just the most basic.
It's just the most
right?
basic, and that's not even a checkbox, right? HIPAA compliant is actually another long list of things that you just don't get out of the box. There's a lot of steps to it, what level, and that's just the beginning. Then you have to do what's called penetration testing to make sure that thing that you set up actually works. And if there's a data breach, you don't lose everybody's data. And it's not that these early stage founders are the ones that I'm working with. It's not that they want to risk anybody's data, but you really have to know how to build that technical architecture correct to begin with, and all the dimensions. And it's just a lot to learn when you're also learning marketing and FDA pathways and getting an accountant and a lawyer and CPT codes and like all of that different stuff. But it's so, and it also, frankly, it's incredibly boring. So it kind of gets pushed to the back burner. Nobody's like, oh boy, I can't wait to talk HIPAA. It's like super exciting. It's boring.
That's why I
It's
was burying
boring.
my head. I just cringe. I have to change the subject because I know our time is limited, and I was kind of really fascinated with one particular startup or company that you're working with called, I hope I'm allowed to disclose, it's on your website. So it's called Uvisa. It's a light therapy for vaginal infection. I love this idea. I think that in the times we're in with overuse of antibiotics and antibiotic resistance, this could be a total game changer. How did you pick this? How did this person, this CEO, win you over? I'm just curious.
I'll have to introduce you to Ella, who's the founder. She's in Denmark. And she was an applicant in the first year in 2022. And so again, we were just drinking from the fire hose. We're like, you could solve this, you could solve that. And when she told us about this device that she had in mind that did not care whether it's a bacterial or a fungal infection, the light therapy would address it. My co-founder Karen and I at the time were like, oh, really? Like that's completely novel. We had not heard anything like that in any of these applications. We look online, we can't find anything. Again, we don't know. Maybe UV light's going to cause damage, but we're going to listen to what the founder's saying and trust that they're going to work through the pathways to keep this safe for women. And so the teams that we pick up, some of them aren't ready to start design right away. And they actually weren't ready at that time, but we ran into them at Health Europe, HLTH Europe in 2024, and ran into them on the floor, and they're like, oh, can we get started? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so they just put out their wait list for their new product. The founder and a co-founder are obviously like very savvy business people. They're checking all the boxes on data privacy, data security, taking their device through, working with companies, making sure that the device itself is, safe for intravaginal use. And wow, what an idea if it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was leaving the gym this morning and, naturally shoved my phone into the UV light cleanser that they had when I was walking out. And then suddenly I saw this and said, wow, that's kind of genius. So was interested, but thank you. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to hear your enthusiasm. When I hear, digital health design studios, et cetera, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. So this has been incredibly instructive. Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.